Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we'll be doing a box office preview for this upcoming weekend, which will once again see Avatar: The Way of Water of the giant blue Smurf people underwater dominating the box office weekend, as is no surprise to anyone. What is kind of a surprise to me, though, is the fact that the film M3GAN, which based on the trailer just looks outright abysmal, is actually projected to make $23.2 million in its domestic opening. And since these Blumhouse horror picks tend to be quite cheap, this film costing around $12 million, the prospects of this movie making its money back are actually quite high. In addition to that, coming up against Avatar: The Way of Water, only having a difference of around $13 million after this, again, now going into the fourth weekend of Avatar: The Way of Water, is, again, I think quite impressive for M3GAN, and continuing to be impressive for Avatar: The Way of Water, though we are going to see, as you can see from that drop-off, starting to see the box office drop off and actually really normalize, with people going back to work, not having as much time to dedicate to an over 3-hour film. And I think that ultimately is going to have a negative impact on the film's overall legs when it comes to the domestic box office. The film is still going to make money, whether you believe what James Cameron has said about the money, whether you believe what the studio has said about the money. Again, my charting follows what the studio has said, which means that the bar has already been passed, which again would have been around $1 billion to break even. This film now at around $1.45 billion, so already really passing up the box office of Top Gun: Maverick. So this now is officially the highest grossing film to be released in 2022. And again, kudos to them for that, even though the film is still trash. And yes, I know that's still going to trigger some people for me saying that, but hey, it is what it is. The fact, though, that M3GAN is still going to do as well as it is, even though it looks pretty bad, is interesting to say at the very least. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk a little bit more about the Avatar box office, because obviously the comparable domestic that people are being, have been putting this up against has been Rogue One. What they haven't been doing is adjusting the numbers for inflation. Unfortunately, the numbers is down. That's right, everyone. The numbers is down. The numbers is down. Don't know exactly why. I'm sure they're going through some maintenance, and they're not expecting someone like me needing to access that site this early in the morning, but it is what it is. We'll talk about that and some of the other films to come out this weekend, and also what their numbers are going to look like, and how they're going to be doing. So anyway, before we get further, please make sure you smash that like button, have that fire button if you're watching on Odyssey, and smash the rumble button as well. And also make sure that you check that bell notification and make sure it's turned on, so that way you know every time a video or live stream is live on the channel, and also, of course, that you are subscribed. So Avatar: Way of Water expected to make $36.1 million, which is only a 46% drop-off. Again, this is a projection coming from Box Office Pro, which again can be hit and miss from time to time. Regardless of that, even if it is just a little bit higher, this film is looking to have a pretty strong hold, even for a film in its fourth week of release and coming off of a holiday weekend. I would have expected it to be a little bit of a higher drop-off myself for any big-budget film for that matter, but obviously this is showing that there are still a lot of people who are going out to see this movie. Most likely people, based on the comment section that I've seen, some people claiming they've seen the film 8 or 9 times. Good Lord, God help you. But it is still interesting nonetheless to see just how many people are apparently going to see this film multiple times in theaters, spending the amount of money that tickets can now cost for any movie, and spending 3 hours plus as well. Again, that's a lot of time to dedicate to a specific film. And again, if you like this film and you want to dedicate that time, that is your prerogative, but I also have that right to still question your decisions. We also have the film M3GAN, which is expected, as I said, to open to $23.2 million. This is, again, based off of around a $12 million or so budget, at least according to the article here from Wikipedia, which we can always take with a grain of salt. The one interesting thing is that normally I'm able to at least say, hey, there's a reference point somewhere. There's actually no reference for this budget, but it is something that I would still probably accept as real and as true, simply by the fact that this is a film by Blumhouse, and they tend to spend very little on these kinds of movies. It is still interesting nonetheless, because this film just looks completely, utterly abysmal, even though James Wan apparently is involved as far as the writer of the screenplay and as one of the producers of the film. I don't know, it just looks really, really weird. And there was also a moment or two in the trailer where it seems to again, in a certain way, sexualize the doll with dancing. It was very, again, let's just say I wish this film would fail based on just that alone, but it's not looking like that's going to be the case. And hey, January is the place where films go to die, unless, of course, you are a Blumhouse horror film where you're able to make movies for so little money that you don't really need all that much money in return to make your money back. So that is looking pretty good right now for that film. Coming in the number 3 spot, projected to be in the number 3 spot, is going to be Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Expected to drop 52%. So again, about what I would have expected for a post-holiday weekend, kind of normalization here. But the film's still doing much better than I think many people would have expected, to get to $80.1 million domestic. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever coming in then at the number 4 spot, $2.8 million, as I've been saying for a long time. And again, this is another film I was not a big fan of at all. and has a lot of big problems with it, but still, it's expected to be at $444.9 million by the end of this weekend, still at over 2,000 screens, so this film, as you can see, very, very likely to truck to at least $450 million at the domestic box office, which is what I've been saying now for several weeks. And then the number 5 spot is going to go to I Want to Dance with Somebody, which continues to have, again, not a terrible hold there at 39%. Going into its third or fourth week of release, but the film ultimately will end up being a failure because it has a lot of money to make back. You then also have A Man Called Otto, which is going to have finally going to a few more screens. Remember that this film released in about 4 theaters just to be in Oscars contention, because that's what they do sometimes for this movie or for these kinds of movies. So that's why you have a massive percentage increase. Whether or not that's going to mean anything for it in the long run is anyone's guess. And then, of course, you have the continued downfall of films like Babylon, Violent Night, which was able to still make money back. The Whale, which continues to elude me. Hopefully it'll be available soon somewhere near me. And also for the Fableman. So let's go ahead then and talk then a little bit about Avatar: The Way of Water. Right now it's at $1.48 billion. Again, I cannot use, unfortunately, the numbers, which I strongly prefer over Box Office Mojo. Box Office Mojo used to be the box office king, and then it got bought up by IMDb/Amazon, and it's really just gone to hell ever since then. There have been so many cases this year alone where their numbers have been completely wrong. So much, in fact, that even people like John Campea and other Hollywood shills have even gone and run with some of the fake false numbers that could have easily been proven to be false, but obviously it was some type of calculation error that it took them over a day to be able to address and to fix. So that's the kind of site that they run. So I tend not to trust their numbers, but this sounds about right based on the last time I checked the numbers.com. So $1.48 billion. So I would put this film either right above or slightly below where Top Gun Maverick was by the end of its run. Regardless of that, I've been saying this for a long time, that this is going to easily pass up the worldwide box office for Top Gun Maverick. The question really, and ultimately the interesting point for me, is going to be, where does this film end up being domestically? Because as you can see, around almost 70% of its entire box office is coming from the international markets. One other interesting point about this is that when you look and see just how much money this film has made in China at this point in time, it has made $162 million. And so this is, again, one of those reminders, because this is something that I do for every single film that ever has a major release in China. Guess what? Only 25% of that, roughly, is going to go back to the studio. 75% of that is going to go to the Communist Party of China. So for all those major defenders of the film, hey, you have a right to your opinion. You don't have a right to your own facts. And the fact is that hundreds of millions of dollars is going to be going to the CCP to fund their nefarious human rights violations because of this movie. So there you go. You're welcome. Hope that you enjoy that one and chew on it for just a little bit. But the main point I wanted to go to there for Avatar: The Way of Water is the comparison that is again being made with this film and also with Rogue One, because people are saying that there's a little bit of a comparison as far as where those films were by the end of their run. So by the end of this weekend, the film will be at $506.4 million. Compared to Rogue One, that means Rogue One would have been, at the 24th day of its release, around $477.3 million. And so as you can see, there are indeed still these comparable numbers. Some reports have come out to already say, oh, well, the film's actually already made its, it's already passed the number of Rogue One. The problem is that this number does not adjust for inflation, which you have to do because ticket prices, for one, were a lot cheaper back here, even back in 2016, 2017, when this film had its initial release. And also, two, because you have much higher ticket prices even today, and even by today's standards, especially when you look at some of the premium formattings that are being offered. So when I take this number here and put it into one of these calculators that will actually take an amount this high, you can see that the equivalent in today's terms, in today's dollars, would actually be closer to around $579.7 million. And so what that means is that though Avatar: Way of Water is still tracking quite well, it is not going to be anywhere close to, at this point, still the adjusted for inflation numbers for Rogue One. So what does that actually mean by today's standards? To me, what that says is that this film is on pace to be able to make about as much as what we saw from Rogue One, and that means that this film probably can get somewhere between about $550 and $650 million by the end of its run. Could make more than that, but that right now seems to be the pace that this film is going on, especially as people start to go back to work and go back to school. I expect these numbers to continue to drop off, right? Even with very little competition in the month of January. Just because there's no competition does not mean that your film is going to continue to do as well as it had before, especially when you have to dedicate over 3 hours of your time to a story like Avatar: The Way of Water, which really doesn't have that much of a satisfying conclusion, story-wise specifically. And again, I know people are going to fight me on that, but hey, go ahead and keep on fighting and talking to nobody or talking to trollery. Anyway, so Avatar: The Way of Water, $5 or $6.4 million, is not going to be keeping at pace with Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. Of course, some people might be able to point and say, well, if you look at the actual drop-offs, right, you're seeing that the film Avatar is performing better. And I'm not going to say that that's true. And I'm not saying that this film is not going to eventually catch the total for Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. At this point, though, there was a recording of this video using the numbers that we're getting from Box Office Mojo and from this inflation calculator. Again, normally I rely upon the inflation that can be deduced from the numbers.com. So again, they might have a different number there for the actual inflation number. The point of what I'm trying to say here is that the film is tracking very, very well domestically, will have a very strong domestic finish, especially by 2022 standards, but will ultimately likely still come underneath the $711 million that was made by Top Gun Maverick, which means Top Gun Maverick could theoretically still be the top domestic movie of the year, even though, of course, because of the international numbers here, including Communist China, there is going to be enough money, more than enough money, even in other countries outside of China, to be able to push this film, Avatar: The Way of Water, to be the highest grossing film of the year 2022, as far as films released in 2022. And I still think $2 billion is absolutely within the frame, within the possibility, especially with only a 46% drop expected for its fourth week of release going into a non-holiday weekend. So those are the numbers as they stand. What are y'all's thoughts about this? Let me know in the comment section down below whether or not you think that we're going to see a bigger drop-off, a smaller drop-off for Avatar: The Way of Water, and also what you think as far as the actual domestic box office. Do you think that that range of around, $600 to $650 million end domestic number range is likely? Do you think that's going to make a little bit more? Again, I think it's theoretically possible if we continue to see, even in these off weekends, these non-holiday weekends, if we continue to see drops like this, then absolutely we could see the film eventually catch up to those adjusted numbers for Rogue One, pass those numbers for Rogue One, and ultimately lead it to making quite a bit of money. Could even be the highest grossing domestic release of this year. And just to go ahead and give just a bit of a little bit more of a completion on this, if you look at the end result, the end total for Rogue One, that was around $532 million. So putting that into the same calculator here, let's make sure to get that number out because otherwise it won't read it. That means that $646 million is the total domestic that Rogue One made. Is that film going to be able to get there? I think that it's absolutely possible, but based on how far behind right now Avatar: Way of Water is tracking at the same point of release, it seems that falling somewhere around this amount of money or just maybe a little bit less or a little bit more is very likely. So maybe that 625 to around again 625 to 650 I could totally see happening for Avatar: Way of Water, unless of course we start to see some major changes and this film catching up to and passing officially the actual adjusted numbers for Rogue One. Then we'll have a different story. But let me know your thoughts about this in the comment section down below. And also, are you planning to see any of the films that are going to be out this weekend? Again, really the only new film is going to be M3GAN, which just looks abysmal. Do you plan on seeing M3GAN? Are you finally going to be able to see films like The Whale, which are getting slowly rolled out to other theaters? I need to check my local AMC to see if we're finally getting it. I don't think we are, but hopefully that'd be awesome if we were. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, not the fire button, honestly smash the rumble button. Lord knows the trolls will continue to be out as they continue to try to defend a mass billion-dollar film giving hundreds of millions of dollars to China. For what reason, I have no idea why. But anyway, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my January Patreon Subscribe Star and Locals members at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. Starting off with my Patreon members, Father Luca Illich, Garrett Searles, Jaimir Ari Hymason, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Orange Chat Reviews, who you can check out on his YouTube channel, Orange Chat Reviews, Rosetta Allen, who you can check out at her YouTube channel, Eagle Rider, and Miss Martin Muses, who you can check out at her YouTube channel, Miss Martin Muses, and of course the amazing Empress of the Universe, Tina B, who you can check out over on her YouTube channel, Tina B, with her show Soup to Nuts, which she does, tries to do every single week with her friend and with fellow Valkyrie and fellow mod of the channel, Stephanie B. And of course, I do want to give a special shout out to Tina B and make sure that everyone knows that our prayers are being extended towards her as she continues to recover from complications that have occurred recently with her medically and has resulted in a loss of eyesight, or at the very least of more clear eyesight. So to continue to offer our prayers for her. Also a shout out to my subscribe star peeps, Matt317, who can check out on his Twitch channel by the same name, the R, Fast Reaction, Mr. Roy, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and the K-Man, who you can check out over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, to my locals members, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player, J.H. Schwalbach, Brett D90, and the amazing lawyer Robert Barnes. So thank you all very much for supporting me on Local, Subscribestar, and Patreon. If you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, please check out the top link in the video description below, where you get access to this, and also, of course, to a monthly podcast that I do with John the Flick Flickinger. Also access to a giveaways channel on my Discord, where I give away films this month. I've got films like Seven Samurai on Blu-ray from the Criterion Collection to give away, The Banshees of Inisherin, Tommy Boy Steelbook, Edge of Tomorrow 4K, and tons of other 4Ks and Steelbooks as they get released over the next month will be available, and also, of course, digital codes as well. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, check out that top link and join over on Patreon, Subscribestar, or on Locals. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.